The Wanchos, a tribe belonging to the Tibeto-Burmese family, are found mostly in the Longding district of Arunachal Pradesh and live in villages tucked away in the foothills of eastern Himalayas. The 41 villages, covered by a canopy of swaying bamboos, which the Wanchos inhabit, are strategically situated on hilltops with steep paths leading to them, offering protection from their enemies and favoring their wild isolation. Before coming into contact with Christianity, they were animists and headhunters. Given the strict restrictions on missionary efforts in the state, education became an effective means of evangelization. From 1976, youth from the state who resided in missionary boarding schools in the neighboring states, attending Catholic educational institutions, returned home to spread the good news. The pioneering efforts of these youth was supplemented by occasional clandestine visits of the missionaries.
I still remember the day that I first went up to Minthong. We traveled about 9 hours from Tinsukia and reached there towards evening. There were practically no roads, and I did not carry many things with me. I took one small suitcase with my belongings. I took the mass kit, my prayer book, and my sleeping bag with me.
A missionary, like so many before him in different parts of the world, leaving home and dear ones and pitching his tent among an unknown people with its own language and culture and the often challenging climatic conditions.
When I came to Minthong, I was totally cut off from the world. There were no means of communication. The only thing I had was a small transistor radio on which I used to listen to the news. And the people also were completely cut off from the world.
Finally, circumstances being found more favorable, in 1996, a decision was made to begin a mission center at Minthong. Yet these are consolations, seeing the many-sided transformation of an entire people.
But today, and I find that the whole village changed. There are TVs now in the houses, there are mobile phones, people are talking over the phone, and people are dressed better, there are more vehicles on the roads, and completely the village has changed for the better.
Most Wanchos still live in their typical structures built from bamboo and palm leaves and divided into different chambers with heads of hunted animals adorning them. The chief's house is easily distinguishable by its bigger size. The unmarried males in each village used to live in morungs, dormitories, and acquainted themselves with the customs and traditions of the village and guarded the village. Each morung had a long log drum, their only musical instrument, which was beaten on occasions like a successful headhunt or the death of a chief. With the advent of modern education, the morungs have begun to disappear. The Wanchos, both men and women, were scantily clad and loved to tattoo their bodies, darken their teeth, and pierce their noses and ears, from which hung huge ornaments. With increasing contact with the outside world, there are visible changes both in their dress and in other aspects. Jhum cultivation was their approach to farming and consisted essentially in cutting, slashing and burning without any digging and manuring. This resulted in a low yield, impoverishment to the soil, denuding the land and trees, and an undeniable negative impact on the flora and fauna, causing air pollution and soil erosion. Alternative forms like terraced field cultivation, planting of trees including fruit trees, though already introduced, have yet to take firm roots. Lacking even the minimum of primary health services, infant mortality was high. The practice was to appease their gods through prayers and incantations, as professional medical help was non-existent.
Almost every day, every night, every and then they used to come and call me saying that, oh, one child is about to die, please come and pray. So I used to go with them at night, in the middle of the night, and pray for the child. And most of the time we could not save the child. So I said the first thing to do is to save the lives of the children and not anything else.
One of the main contributions of the Church has been in the area of health and hygiene, with special attention paid to the women and children, thanks specially to the intervention of the sisters. This in turn has had an affirmative impact on the villages, with youth groups organizing themselves to keep their village clean and insisting on the use of toilets and the fencing of the freely roaming pigs. Understandably, it was with education that Minthong set itself on the road to transformation.
School, attention! School studies. Don Bosco will shine today. Don Bosco will shine every day. Don Bosco.
Once the schools were opened, the parents were initially reluctant to send their children to school, since they were expected to help with the farming and to care for their younger siblings. Eventually, persuasion, food, and recreational facilities, as well as the fact that the first generation of the educated were well employed, also proved effective.
With the coming of the Catholics, with the education that is imparted, they have come to know themselves better. What is their identity? The most amount of the first books were written by Catholics in these tribal languages, and then later on it is developed. The grammar of most of the tribes, it is written by Catholics. So we have developed the language and they have gone ahead. So that way they have become more conscious of themselves, their language, their identity, and they are also seeing for themselves what they can preserve, what they cannot preserve. So they have really profited by the education that we have given.
Besides education, at the boardings for both boys and girls attached to the mission centers, catechesis is also given prominence and has produced some welcome fruits: 4 sisters and a candidate to the priesthood. Missionary intervention, especially through education, has resulted in helping people to overcome some of the debilitating habits like the use of opium, something to which the Wanchos easily took to once it was introduced by the British. And practices like that of exposing the dead on a 5 to 6 feet high bamboo platform just outside the village.
For the first time, I saw dead bodies kept on the platforms. We could hear the buzzing of flies, and the smell was terrible. But even then, there were 3 or 4 bodies getting rotted on the platform.
Having become aware of the dangers of contamination of the water sources and other hygiene issues associated with such a practice, the Christians have now begun to bury their dead. The Catholic community is very vibrant with packed churches for their various services. In fact, it is around the church and its activities that the entire village now revolves.
Mindong village was already evangelized, and our job was to catechize them more and deepen their faith. So we instructed the parents, we prepared the children for confession and first communion, which we celebrated very solemnly in the village. And from here we went to the other nearby villages and far away. And in some villages we are received nicely, in other villages we are opposed, but ultimately they also became Catholics, and so we had Catholics in all the villages, Wancha villages.
The fathers and sisters keep in close touch with the faithful through regular visits to the sick and the aged in their homes. The Salesians, in keeping with Don Bosco's motto, "Give me souls, take away the rest," are known to be tireless seekers of souls in the northeast of India, and they do it with a due respect for the tribal identity and through genuine efforts to preserve their culture.
One thing, when I went to the village, I went there without any show of anything. Just simple pant and shirt, maybe a sweater and a jacket. And I went with the people, and I went to their houses and sat down on the ground as they sat down, and if they gave me a bit of soup to drink, I drank that one. Whenever they invited for a meal, for any occasion, I went and I ate what they gave. So the people, so that I had no difficulty in mixing with them and eating with them and drinking with them. And when the sisters came, I told the sisters also to pass no remarks on the people, whether they are about their dress or a lack of dress. I said, take them as they are, with no remarks at all. And the sisters also did the same.
I never straightly speak with the people that Jesus is the God and Jesus loves us. I never spoke with them. By seeing my activities, This my own uncle and aunties, the people had been told us, how, what you are doing, what God you are accepting. People call man, but there was a Jesus, he was a Christ. So I am accepting him. They told me to share with him.
Knowing the Vanchos are naturally given to singing and dancing, the Salesians have sought to encourage them in every way.
Very often we take their culture as only for singing and dancing and festival, no. But a culture is something more than that. It is the whole composite of their living, their habit, the way they eat, the way they live, they cultivate, the way they communicate with the others. All these form the culture. And sometimes they show forth something in these festivals and dancing and singing and shouting, and that we take it for their culture. And sometimes it happens that they give up some of these ones because saying that it was of pagan, it was traditional. But now they are reviving and doing it better than what they were doing before in all these aspects. The language has been developed.
What the Salesians have achieved among the Vanchos of Arunachal Pradesh and in the northeast region of India is a tribute to their daring and hope, their convictions and commitment, as well as their ability to work as a team for the sake of the kingdom of God in the spirit of St. Paul. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth.
It is very much changed now, because in those days my mommies and my daddies, they used to tell me that as I was started that if I go to school, if I take a paper and all, they used to scold me, na, you eat the paper, don't eat the food.
Indeed, the transformation effected among the Vanchos in the short period of 22 years is nothing short of the incredible. Indeed, it is the Lord's doing, and it's marvelous in our eyes.
I did not expect to see those big schools, the convent, and so many models, boys and girls. I never expected the whole place full of children running about, shouting and singing and yelling. That was something unexpected. I never expected such a huge number to be there. You know, that was really surprising, really surprising.
We also rise in salute to those soldiers of Christ, all of them called by name to be humble yet effective instruments in His hands.